what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Casual Movie Fan, the show where we give you reviews and news of all things movies. So today, we're going to do a late review of Mad Max. And of course, if I'm going to do a review about a movie franchise I have nothing to know about, I bring in my good friend, my cousin, my blood, Zeb Reichert.
Yo!
So, yeah, Mad Max has been out for about a month and a half, 2 months now.
Yeah.
And I was really late to the Mad Max game. Everyone, all I heard were great things about it, and I just never got a chance to go. I think it was during finals or something. So, hey, better late than never. So, Mad Max. It is about Max.
Max is the stereotypical lone wanderer of this post-apocalyptic Australian wasteland. He is mad, as his name says, and is driven insane by the memory of people that he could not save. And as such, is a loner. He doesn't want to get involved with anybody, ever, because it just leads to them dying and him feeling bad about them dying. So, we open with this scene of him trying to run away from these guys, and they catch him, and then they take him into this place, and then they tattoo stuff on his back.
Right.
And from there on, he's
a blood bag.
A blood bag, which is
to Nicholas Holt's character, who
Nux.
Nux,
who is
yeah.
a what they call a
war
boy.
Yeah.
And the war boys are this group of kids who are raised in this citadel that the main bad guy, Immortan Joe, and
who actually played Toe Cutter in the original. Was it Mad Max or Road Warrior that he played Toe Cutter?
I think it was in the original, the first one. It's been a while, but I think that's where he was. Anyway, Immortan Joe is just the big bad guy that controls the Citadel, which is this tower of rock that is a giant well of water. And because of that, because he controls the water, he controls the civilization that's growing around him, yada, yada, yada. And the big thing you hear is that these war boys are kids that have been irradiated, and they're basically going to die very quickly. And so they're just raised from when they're really little to go to war. And their greatest feat, the greatest thing they can achieve before they die, is to die on their own terms, and to go to Valhalla as, a hero.
Right.
And so, the war boys aren't exactly evil, they're just raised to die. And it just so happens that most of the things they do include killing lots of innocent people because they're sent there by Immortan Joe.
And it's also interesting to look at it there's not really good or evil, it's just who's the bigger dick in this world. Because
and how to survive.
And even Max is kind of a dick at some point too, so
right.
it's just who's more of a dick? Immortan Joe or anyone else? Because, throughout the movie, it is just an adrenaline rush of just cars in the desert, just driving around, crashing into each other, and explosions, and it's just a giant art house film with a lot of explosions, which you never really see in Hollywood nowadays. So, the director, let's talk about the director for a minute, George Miller. Now, he directed all the other Mad Max movies back in, 70s, 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah, around that time. And he's going into his 80s now, and everyone...
And to make a film like this, when you're up there in the age, it's okay, you still have directing chops, all right?
And he was in there. He wasn't just letting a cinematographer do everything, which I'm sure they did, but he was in there getting all those shots. So it's really impressive to see someone at that age doing a film like this, and it makes me really curious about that Justice League Mortal movie that he was going to do in 2007 before the writer's strike.
Right.
Yeah, now I'm kind of disappointed we didn't get to see that Justice League, but whatever, we digress.
Anyway, so one of the things I was getting at with this whole way back when I said about the blood bag thing, because he was a blood bag for one of these kids that's dying,
right,
is that the film does a really good job of world building here. And it does it without pandering to the audience without stopping for 10 minutes to say, a blood bag, everybody, is this person who has the correct blood type for one of the war boys to keep them alive long enough to die on their own terms and go to Valhalla, yada, yada, yada. No, instead it's just, this guy's O negative, he's the, universal donor. Get him in the cage, we need a blood bag. And then it shifts to the next scene, and there he is with a tube sticking out of his neck and down into this kid who's stealing his blood, essentially. And you realize, blood bag literally means they're using humans as blood bag donors. Which leads to one of my favorite parts in the film is the first time you see the witness.
Yeah.
And this is something that like you didn't when you didn't really understand what the war boys were and why they were like all like dusty looking, because they look really pale and they're like dying, and you don't really understand that. And this one war boy gets shot and he's dying, but instead of just laying down and going help me, he gets back up, yells at his friends after spraying his mouth with silver chrome spray paint, witness me!
Getting all hyped up.
He gets hyped and then just commits suicide, dive bombs into this car and blows it up. And everyone's like, yeah, we witnessed you, brother! And it's like, what is that about? And you realize that these kids are just living long enough to die valiantly in some great heroic act.
Yeah, so let's also talk about why the war boys are going into war. So in the movie, there's a character named Furiosa, and apparently, let's backtrack a little bit. So in the movie, and Morton Joe has these wives, like what, four? Yeah,
There's
four
like
wives, five wives.
I think so. There's the pregnant one. There's
The redhead.
The
black one.
the brunette, and the Asian.
Right. So there's five wives, and Furiosa has decided to save them from Morton Joe because he kept them in a cellar, pretty much, and they were just there for breeding. Like he would just go in there, impregnate them, have another son, and just leave them. So Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron, she sneaks them out on this what is it, the war hall?
It's the war rig.
War rig, that's it. And yeah, so she's pretty much taking them away to the civilization that she grew up in called the Green Place. And Morton Joe finds out, and that's when he sends the war boys out to find her and kill her. And that's where, Max becomes a blood bag for Nicholas Holt's character.
It escapes being a blood bag and then joins with, or not really joins with, but like meets up with Furiosa and her gang after a big storm that gets him away from the war boys and whatnot. And this is like a part where we look into Mad Max's character and why he is a loner and how he acts around other people. Because at first he's just surrounded by people who are antagonists to him and whatnot. And after this huge, beautifully rendered storm he enters. And I also, just to digress just 1 second, my favorite line in the entire film is, "Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!"
Yeah, it was. Yeah, this storm was like
just this giant sandstorm that was like electric. Like, I don't know, man.
Top-notch CGI, like that, and it looked real too. So, yeah, and where were they filming? Like Siberia or something? Like some desert for months on end, where they were filming that movie. It's funny because I guess Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy didn't get along very well, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're never gonna do another movie together again." It's like they were in the desert for months. I would hate everyone after doing that. So who knows if they'll ever do if they'll do a Mad Max sequel with Furiosa and Max together. Because I know.
Oh, well, no, that's one of the things. I will say that they will not, because every Mad Max movie isn't about, except for the first one perhaps, isn't about Mad Max. He is not the main character. He is a side character that enters someone else's story, but he's the main character for us because it's viewed from his perspective.
And Fury Road is more of like Furiosa's movie.
Yeah, it's her story.
Right.
But Mad Max is the one that enters it. The story wouldn't be able to work if Mad Max weren't there. He's very pivotal to every single story he enters, but it's not his story.
Right.
He's the lone wanderer that enters, helps fix things, and then leaves.
And also, like we said, it really is Furiosa's movie, so that's why, all these articles coming out saying why Furiosa needs her own movie. I don't think she does. I feel like this was her movie. And also, like, if you start going into the backstory of Furiosa and, like, what happens after the events of Fury Road, I don't know, I feel like you might lose something in the character. Kind of like how everyone wants a backstory or at least a continuation of Boba Fett's story in the Star Wars series. You lose something because the beauty of Boba Fett is the mystery behind him. And if you start dissecting that character, we might lose interest in it. So, it's one of those kind of gambles when it comes down to these kind of movies. So, yeah, and really, that's kind of just what Mad Max is. It's a very simple story, but it's done beautifully. And
yeah, like I'll give it like a C plus or a B for story because it was super streamlined, pretty predictable, but the world building A plus, like fantastic. And then the visuals I'm gonna give an A, like a mid A, because of one scene where it was blatantly 3D.
Oh yeah.
And I could not forgive that.
Yeah, when I saw that
one scene.
It was like even when I'm just like, oh, this movie's amazing, and like something explodes and they're just pieces flying and there's just one like big piece that you just see it rotating towards you, like, oh my god, that's for 3D. That's for 3D.
That's for the 3D.
That's for 3D.
So here's what I want to talk about with this film and why I think beyond world building, why I think it was so great, even though the story was just a very basic story, is that one of the big themes about it is disability. And not disability in the sense that most of us think disability, because each of the characters has something holding them back that they have to push through.
Right.
Or they already have pushed through, mind you, but it's still something that was there at one point. For Mad Max, he's mad, he's insane, he's got that holding him back.
Or, as they say in the beginning of the movie, is he mad? Or is the rest of the world mad?
So Max has that holding him back. Furiosa had
an arm.
And she didn't have an arm anymore, but she got over that by having this awesome prosthetic galvanic arm.
And she didn't even need it. Like,
she didn't even need. She was able to beat the crap out of Max.
She beat him up with a nub.
Man, she just destroyed him.
And if you're one of those misogynistic douchebags who are just like, oh, I can't be beat up by a woman, you'll probably commit suicide after seeing you just got beat up by a woman with no arm. So it's just like it gets worse and worse.
So there's that, and then with the 5 wives.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna blanket this one because I don't want to go too into depth in each one of them because I haven't looked into each one of their story enough to like really talk about it. But the idea behind them is, and you can get angry at me for saying this, I don't mean it harshly. I'm just saying, for them, pregnancy is a disability. Not a disability, but it's something that can get in the way.
Right.
And also chains you to somebody. And that was one of the big things here, was that Immortan Joe was like connected to and had them chained to him because he was, the father.
And there was one of the wives that was pregnant. There was a scene where he actually yelled at her and was like, "Hey, you belong to me because you have my property," and he was referring to the child inside of her, which is. I also want to talk about the wives. It's very interesting because in this like society, especially when it comes to the wives, women are very subjectified. Like that was the whole point. Objectified. Thank you. But then, like when you actually watch them, they're pretty badass. Like there's that one girl who knows how to like she's like loading a gun, saying like, "Oh, we have this many shells for the shotgun. We have this many bullets." Like they're able to take care of themselves in a world where they're supposed to be like, "Oh, you're nothing but a breeder." They're so much more, and I don't believe that. It's what was that one article saying that it was pushing the feminine agenda? I don't think so.
The great thing about this film is, it's. You can say that it is, because in a way it is, but really, what this film is doing is providing, I want to say an ideal, but it's just it's an equality. Like,
Right.
There is no, if you say that this is, if you're accusing it, of pushing the feminist agenda, then you're part of the problem as to why we need to call it a feminist movie, is because it's supposed to, this movie was actually more about equality, and if you just don't even think about that, it's just a really good movie with really strong characters. Do we really need to call every movie with a strong female lead feminist?
Exactly.
Right now, we kind of do, because there are people that are arguing against that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather not have to say that it's a feminist movie because it's got a female lead. I would rather just call it a really good movie.
Yeah, that's how I see it. And I saw it later in when it came out, so I heard all the articles about the feminist agenda and how all these characters are done. And when I watched, I just thought, oh, it's a good movie with a great female lead. And that was it. I didn't think of it as pushing the feminist agenda. So
I also don't see why people have to feel offended by the fact that there's a woman doing awesome things.
exactly.
So there's that. What else about this movie?
Let's talk about Immortan Joe for a little bit. Like,
Oh my God,
he was kind of scary.
he was kind of scary and really well done. There were a couple parts where I didn't quite catch what he was saying. But
that's almost everyone in the movie. Even
Yeah.
Max, played by Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
I had no idea what he was saying.
My second time through, I understood pretty much everything that was being said. But the final part to the disabilities thing that I was talking about actually is, I can segue really quick into this, is that Immortan Joe and his clan were all afflicted by radiation poisoning.
Right.
So that was their disability, was the effects of the world, I guess, this horrible world that had been created by humans on themselves. And so when we first see Immortan Joe, his body is gross and full of all kinds of nasty cancerous tumors, and there are people like blowing, their kids blowing what looks like ash or something onto him to essentially keep his skin from sticking to the armor that he gets put on him. And I love how the front piece of the armor has fake abs and stuff on it, so that he actually looks like, because his body is just this mass.
Yeah.
It's not even like shaped in any certain way, so he has to have this cast of plastic put on him to like
Holding him
together essentially. Otherwise he'd fall apart. And there's also all these medals and stuff
the military medals on his chest plate. And it's like,
because it doesn't mean anything anymore, though. Why does that mean anything?
and this guy was probably like a gas station attendee before this all happened. So you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what he was.
He was probably nothing. He was just like, I'm going to take so much advantage of this.
Yeah, the only person we know what was anything before the movie, or before this film, was Max, because he says, I was a cop.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, granted, yes, in the originals he was, and we kind of assume that this one takes place in the same universe as the first two.
They said, I think it was George Miller or one of the producers. They said that this movie takes place in between the first one and the second one.
I can believe that.
Yes, I think that they said that's where it kind of lies. But it's just more of like, think of it kind of like as James Bond. It's just another adventure.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Not connecting. It's just
they're all serial.
Exactly.
They're very just one shot, which is great. I love that. Like, that's almost like, just to skip back like 2 or 3 years, Judge Dredd, the new Dredd movie, was like, it's a one shot. I can get more Dredd movies as long as they don't connect to the first one. Like, they can like mention that, we can have characters cross over from those old ones, but we don't need a story arc that takes over 3 movies. Just give us one, bam, really good 2-hour one-shot movie with characters we love.
Right.
You know?
So, since the movie came out, we're going to go into some spoilers. There's something that kind of bugged me at the end. So, in the beginning of the movie, Immortan Joe, every now and then, would release a lot of water to the people.
Right.
And then he would turn it off, and everyone's like, we hate you, bring back the water. At the end, where so, this is what kind of was funny about it. So, they go to the green place. They find out the green place doesn't exist.
Right.
So, Max comes up and says, you know what? If we keep going straight, there's nothing but sand.
Yeah, we're gonna die out there.
We need to go back. And it's just funny because you're just like,
We came
all the
this
way. An hour and 50 minutes of this movie was us going to this direction.
To be fair, Max wouldn't have said that if Immortan Joe and the rest of the war party had just gone back to the Citadel.
Exactly.
He knew that this was actually the best time for them to do what they did.
True, and that's where
But yes, it did feel like they just like came out of nowhere
and that's why I kind of let that one slide because it's like, oh, that makes sense. The war boys are
it's at least the perfect time to do that.
At least the dangerous war boys are out, and you can just sneak your get back in there. So Furiosa takes the wives back. They take over the Citadel in a very weird way. Like, it happened so fast, I barely noticed it. How Immortan Joe dies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his mask, which is like this weird, like,
it's like a
toothy grin, like, kind of
mask.
mask.
Yeah, it looks like the bottom of a skull.
Yeah.
So imagine, like, Bane from the new Dark Knight movie, if he had, like, long tubes coming out of the side of his mask and going into, like, a canister in the back of his head, on his back. So that's what it looked like, only it was, like, surgically attached to his face.
So there's a scene where it gets caught on something, and it
this is what happens, okay?
Yeah,
so Furiosa has her metal arm, and she comes up on the left side of the car that Immortan Joe is driving,
which is like this bug on it.
Yeah, it's like a bug that's been like jacked. The back wheels have been jacked up super freaking high, and it's got all kinds of what you call them. Exhaust pipes on the side that are shooting flame and stuff. Anyway, and it's got like 8 wheels, so like 4 sets of 2 wheels smacked together. So Furiosa is actually scaling the side of this car on the left, coming around to the driver's side, and she grabs a chain from the back of the bug that's like a chain for like a crane and stuff. I don't know, something like that. And she drags this chain with her. And she wraps it around the wheels of the car she's coming, attaches it to her mechanical left arm, brings it up, and hooks it to Immortan Joe's mask, and comes up and says, remember me, or something like that. And
which he announced her at the beginning. He's like, oh, the leader of my crew. Furiosa. It's like
I think it wasn't like remember me. It was remember me. It was telling him to remember her, and then she because I think like her arm was the only thing holding that up, and then she just lets go of her mechanical arm, which causes the chain to start getting pulled by the wheels, and so in one quick movement the wheels turn, pull the chain, which pulls the mask, which you don't even see it happen. You just hear this, and the mask is gone.
And if it was like any other director, you would have saw like this slow mo of his like jaw falling apart. But it's just like a quick like, and his bottom jaw is just gone.
Yeah, like he falls forward. You actually don't even see it for the longest time until the very end of the film, where they go like, I didn't even think they were going to actually show it at all. But then they bring him back, like his body back to the Citadel.
To prove that they killed him and now they're in charge.
Yeah, and they're like, look, we brought Immortan Joe. And they just reveal it's like this grotesque, jawless face. It's just like, oh, buddy, wow, you went there.
And so, like, they killed him and now they're taking over the Citadel. And then Furiosa turns on the water. Now, this is where I start to think, what happens when they run out?
That was another thing.
So it's like, you think Immortan Joe's a dick for not like giving him enough water, but when you think about it, it's like
he couldn't just keep pouring water on those people.
Yeah, because you had to think like, oh no, this water supply most likely has a certain limit where you can only like, because he would turn it on for like what, maybe
a couple seconds,
so everyone could get like just some kind of water and then turn it off. And he had like he didn't want them to be addicted to water. I think that's what he said. Don't become something addicted to it.
Because you'll despise it or something like that. I think this is my take on what they do after. They either start manufacturing like some way of bottling it and like getting it to the people and then getting the bottles back, or they created like an aqueduct kind of thing, so that they don't have to pour water out from those big what you call them, pumps or pipes anymore. So that there's like a lake at the bottom. They like carve out a lake, and so that it just stays there, so that people can get it as long as they want, and then like
hopefully they do that.
Hopefully they would do it. That's the smart thing to do.
Yeah, because
would be to create some kind of like a lake or a pond where the water was falling, and so it would just stay there trapped in like a water well, so that the people can just come back whenever they want to, and then it's not going to
just keep refilling.
Yeah.
So hopefully they do that.
Yeah, you'd think. Otherwise, they're going to run out real fast.
So now the next Mad Max movie is going to be called Wasteland.
Oh, they are doing though.
Yeah, it's called. They already announced it. Because this movie right now, I think, still holds a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes.
It was fantastic.
Now, I think it made, by this point, I think it's around maybe 300 million. So I think that's enough for them to make a sequel. So yeah, it's called Wasteland. Most likely, Furiosa's not going to be in it, not because of whatever happened between her and Tom Hardy, but just because that's just how the Mad Max stories go.
Right.
So I'm very curious now. So I'm going to catch this movie as soon as it comes out instead of wait almost a month and a half. But all right, guys, that's it. Thank you for listening for our review of Mad Max Fury Road.
Well, hold on. Let's grade this.
Okay.
Out of 100.
Out of 100.
I would give this movie probably a really strong 95 or 96. Like, it was fantastic. There's a couple things that hung me up a little bit, but you know what? I can easily forgive them. And I've watched this movie twice now. I'm probably going to see it one or two more times before it's out of theaters.
All right, I would give it about a strong 90. I think there are some things that a little weird. I'm a dialogue person, and there's like very little dialogue in this movie, but it works. It works in this movie. But yeah, I do like just a little, chatting sometimes. But that's just me because that's just how I am. But yeah, a strong 90, still an A. This movie is really, really good, and I hope you guys probably already saw it. So yeah, like I said, that's our review. Thank you for listening. I'm Addison.
I'm Zeb.
Have a good week.